Hi Wolves, in this video I'm going to show you how to make a hybrid trap song. It sounds like this. In this video I'm going to be breaking down each individual part of the song for you, all of the groups, instruments, the buses, and the mixing that goes into making a song like this. So hopefully you can learn something from this video. Hopefully it at least helps you learn more about the different layers and the different parts that go into a song like this. If you want to stream the finished version of this song, I will put a link in the description for you to listen to it. For now, let's get into the song, starting with the intro. So this intro is really cinematic, it's really chill, there's a lot of reverb in it. It starts out with just a piano, or a pad, actually. This pad is basically just a saw wave. It's playing 2 notes at a time, 2 octaves apart. There is a piano. It's playing the same thing. There's a downlifter with some volume automations to give it that kind of fluttery sound. An impact, and then some more impacts that play throughout with a bandpass on it to give it some variation. There's this glitter effect. I made this by running the verse leads through a shifter and a phaser and a flanger and just randomly automating the feedback and the different time settings on it. If you want to learn how to make something like this, I have a YouTube short called How to Make Glitter. That's going to go into the actual processing behind it. But it mostly is just here to fill out the high end of the frequency spectrum. And just add some more texture. And at the very end of the intro, there is a vocal, sounds like this. It is panned right to left. There's some EQ automations on it to get rid of a little bit of the high end and low end. There's some imaging and some dynamic EQ. And we use that to transition out of the intro. Basically, the purpose of all of these sounds are just to give the song a specific atmosphere and make it sound mysterious and kind of tease the melody a little bit, because as we get further into the song we're going to start introducing more layers. So we want to start out pretty basic and minimal, and then we want to transition into the more intense stuff. At this part in the song, this is kind of the first verse of the song. It's getting a little bit more intense. We introduce another pad. I call this one the Midnight Pad, or the Midnight Bass. I have a YouTube short about how to make this in Serum. It's pretty standard. It's really just a saw wave with some distortion, some typical respace processing, but if you want to see the specifics, you can watch that YouTube short where I actually show you how to produce it. But that gets introduced here. We kind of swap out the other pad by cutting out more of the lows to make room for the new pad. There's the glitter, except this time we are just automating the gain and the width to kind of give it a rhythm, make it sound a little bit like it's a percussion loop almost. It sounds pretty cool. It's panned. We're using the bandpass to give it some variation, and then automations to kind of slowly introduce it. The piano continues, and then halfway through this section we introduce more elements that are new. Starting with this ARP. And this string. If you want to learn how to make this ARP, I have a YouTube short on it called How to Make the Build ARP, a hybrid trap build ARP. It's a recent one, so if you look at when this video was posted, it was posted about the same time as that. But it's mostly here to give a little bit more tension to the build-up, because we're going to be introducing more high frequencies as it goes on, and it's just a pretty intense sounding ARP, especially layered with the string. Then towards the end of this section, we're introducing another bass. There are some drums before that. It's just a kick and the cinematic marching band loop. The kick is actually turned off here. We're just using it to sidechain to the loop because we want to give everything just like a little bit of rhythm and make room for this really quiet impact. And so we're sidechaining to this even though this is turned off, but then it will turn on later. There's this new vocal that gets introduced. Basically playing the same melody as the leads. It's really just here to give some variation and build some tension. I think it sounds pretty cool though. I think it works pretty well for this song. It's layered with the original vocal, which is just this main vocal with a lot of reverb. So it kind of switches off. We'll play this vocal and then this one. For the main vocal for this section, I am using delay and reverb, and it's mapped to an envelope follower so that when this vocal is more quiet, we get more delay and reverb. That way we can hear the delay and also hear the vocal without it getting messy. So we transition out of this section and we finally start the build after building all of that tension. It sounds like this. So at this point, we finally play the kick for the first time. It's a pretty noisy kick. In the beginning, it's low passed, and then as the build progresses, we increase the low pass, so we let more high frequencies through. Just to make it a little bit more intense, to kind of make your build louder over time, build more tension, make it more intense. I will use these EQ automations on pretty much everything in the build to do that, even if it's just a small amount. This is the marching band snare. These are really good to use for hybrid trap because they usually have a lot of reverb on them. And they sound trappy, but they also sound cinematic. It's layered with another clap with a lot of reverb. There's 2 claps in here, sound slightly different just to add some variation. And then it's layered with an actual hand clap. This is a trick I've learned after a while, is you wanna not only have variation in your drums, especially your claps. You don't want to like repeat the same clap over and over. You want different claps, but you also want to layer the claps. Sometimes you'll have like an electronic clap and then an actual hand clap layered together like I do here. And then I have that layered with the marching band snare. It's a pretty good tip, especially for this genre and especially for build-ups, is to layer your claps like that. Obviously, you don't want to have like 3 of the exact same clap. Like you want shorter ones. You want them to be spread out across the frequency spectrum, but yeah, it helps a lot. Second half of the drums. So we're just using this same clap, but it's kind of doubled now. We're playing it twice as often. The marching band snare just comes in right there. Usually before these downbeats, like at the halfway point, it's good to introduce another perk there. That's a small tip, but it's good to know. Then there's some more percussion that plays. It's mostly white noise, but it just adds another layer of noise as the build is increasing, just to give even more variation, make the build even louder, kind of just add more noise. The snare fill right before the last section, that's what I was talking about here with the marching band snare. Like right before this downbeat, and then right before this downbeat, we have another percussion just to kind of build some more tension before the loop kind of restarts. Yeah, it's a small thing, but it's noticeable. It's good to have, I think. It's good to know about. An impact right when the build starts, layered with a high impact. Then that high impact plays again. It's reversed. I'm fading it in to make room for the kick because it's just so much noise. If we didn't fade everything in at least a little bit, it's just going to be so much louder. We just don't need it to be that loud. Risers. We have the tea kettle riser, which is mostly just a detuned saw wave, super high pitched. And I'm pitching it up during the second half of the build. We have a siren that is... This siren is also in the drop, so it's kind of teasing that a little bit. What is this? And then kind of a glitch riser that is playing like a laser bubble sound effect, and then it's playing it faster and faster as it goes on. The purpose of this one is really just to add another weird layer to the build. You can really use anything in place of this. It's good to have these high frequency things for sure, but the most important thing is that it's getting faster as it goes up. It's not really like playing the same melody. It's not really even in key. It's just there to build dissonance and tension. We have this pre-drop vocal. Here come the pain! And so we're just teasing it a little bit here. Because if that wasn't here, this kind of sounds too unfamiliar and out of nowhere. Here come the pain! So if you just tease these things a little bit before, even if it's really quiet, it's almost like the listener is expecting to hear it. And then there's a reverb layer, just to give it some extra reverb. I could have just put a reverb on here and automated it, but it's just a little bit cleaner if you're able to do it in audio. It just makes everything a little bit more clean. For the verse. I believe I recorded the entire verse and then I just automated the gain to make it sound like a stab here. I kind of wanted it to sound like a future bass stab. But I don't really know how close I got, but this is just another rhythmic layer, and then as it plays, it's getting pitched up with shifter. The pads play at the same time. The arp and the string keep going. And the delay and reverb is turned down at this point on these, because if the delay and reverb was still all the way up, this would just be a mess. We're using an EQ automation to cut the lows, some more reverb, a little bit of multiband compression, just to keep it relatively the same volume as we're introducing all of these new elements. We don't want one part of it to suddenly be significantly louder, so I use a multiband compressor for that. On the entire group, we're doing more EQ automations. Just to cut it out a little bit at the end. I'm cutting it really slowly here because you don't want to cut it abruptly. You want to make it sound like the listener doesn't even notice that it's kind of fading out. So you got to find like a good balance between cutting it and cutting it in a way that the listener won't actually notice it. That's it for the build. We'll go into the drop. There's only one drop in this song. Here comes the pain! So we'll start with the drums here. It's It's that same kick from the build. It's pretty aggressive. I'm cutting around 200. Sometimes if you have a kick that is too boxy, you can cut around here. So that's what I'm cutting. It sounds totally different. After a while, you can hear these things. This is with the cut, and then without. Slightly different. I guess you don't really hear it a lot here, but it does make a difference. It's a good thing to know about, that you can just put a notch here and cut it a little bit. You don't always want to do that, obviously, but sometimes the kick really needs it. There's this reverb impact that plays in the beginning just to give the start of the drop more impact. Yeah, it's pretty important. Some songs you really can't get away with just throwing layers into it like this, but in this genre, especially in hypertrap music, sometimes the more random noises there are, the better, especially if they're just a little bit controlled. There's this main snare. It is a trap snare with some reverb. It's really short, and this is what I'm sidechaining to. But then it's layered with another snare that already has reverb on it. It's a little bit more of a clap, but it's got this tail. And then sometimes the tail plays longer, just to give it a little bit more variation. Usually I will start with the short snares and then go to the longer one. So it's like a short snare, long snare. There's no percussion at the start, but then about 1/4 of the way through, we introduce percussion. So this is pretty standard percussion, just 2 rides layered together. They'll be pitched up and then pitched down, so you can hear that. There's some variation in how much attack and fade in and fade out they have. I'm fading it in more when it's layered with a kick, because otherwise it just has way too many resonances. Some of them do have the layer, some don't. Yeah, that's just to give it a little bit of variation in the drums. There's a reversed bass that plays throughout, just once in a while. And a reversed snare that plays sometimes. The second half of the drums, we introduce a new snare layer. That layer instead of this. Just to give some more variation in the snare and make the second half of the drums sound more intense than the first. And then we go back to the other snare at one point, just every once in a while. I am sidechaining some things to the kick. The percussion and the drum fills are sidechained to the kick. Sometimes I will sidechain these things, sometimes I won't. Sometimes I'll just start with it sidechained and then I'll delete it later. In this case, there's just so much going on in this song that I wanted to keep the sidechain. We are ducking the vocals on the drums right before the drop starts. So we'll get into the main lead. It sounds like this. This thing took me forever to make. I made so many different versions. I wonder if I can see some of them here. Yeah, so I mean, there's 6 different attempts at it here. There's even more than that, but those were the old versions. I finally got this one to work. I made it by getting a snare and then putting corpus and shifter on it. And that got me close, but it didn't sound very good until I used shifter with the ring mode. This is probably going to sound terrible, but I put it on this ring mode, which I pretty much never use. And that's what gives it that kind of growly, formant-y, foul sound. And yeah, you basically just got to play around with shifter and corpus until you get something like this. You're looking for these resonant peaks. They're not evenly spaced like a triangle wave or a saw wave. They're just kind of all over the place. And then you add comb filtering. So what I did first is I made that sound with the shifter on ring, and then I run it through effects like the reverb filter in Serum 2. I definitely recommend just using the Serum filters as an effect if you have Serum, so you can get pretty cool sounds out of it. Because it has, if you have Serum, you have the effects as a standalone, just called Serum 2 effects. But we're doing the reverb filter at this point. It kind of turns on and off, so it'll be without the reverb filter, and then you'll hear it with. So it's basically starting at a lower pitch, and then it sounds like it's getting pitched up. It's just the reverb filter. Then we're going into a saturator and then cutting the lows after saturating, and then into a multiband compressor to boost. And then the comb filter turns off, then it turns back on again. The second time it turns on, we are automating the chorus and flanger. So that's to give some variation. There's basically A, B, A, C. A is just the regular lead. B is with the comb. Then we go back to A, and then we go to C, which is the comb and the chorus and phaser. And then we're increasing the dry wet on those two to kind of make it more intense and more detuned and more dissonant as this C section goes on. Then we do some EQing to add notches on the frequencies that I like, or where the fundamental would be. Pretty aggressive EQing for these types of sounds in these drops. I would recommend trying super aggressive EQing and then dialing it back as needed. I mean, I wouldn't have gotten this sound without the reverb filter, and I mean, if some of this EQing looks aggressive to you, like, you should see what the reverb filter actually does. It's a lot. It's really aggressive. There's some more automations on the group, just doing EQ automations, because as you're increasing the chorus and flanger, it can be annoying. It can also get quieter, so I'm just manually changing the gain. That is for the first half. And then we're also changing the reverb cutoff just to automate that. So you can see that here it's increasing. That's basically just to build more tension. This makes it sound like it's getting pitched up, just building the tension. The second half then just has the cutoff at different points. But But it's basically that same strategy of turning the comb on and off, and then on the third section, the C part, we're using the chorus and the phaser, and during that whole time we're still automating the reverb filter cutoff and the resonance of the reverb filter to basically change the sound a lot over time just by making small changes. This is the MIDI, if you were wondering. It's basically always playing C and D sharp, and then as it kind of transitions from the B section to the A section, it just walks down from D sharp to C. Basically just repeats that over time. One of the big tricks is to flatten it so that you can manually move it around. Like here, I gave it, what, a 12 millisecond delay. And that is because there's no kick there. But here, I gave it some delay because that is when the kick is hitting. So it's sidechained the kick, so it's basically going to mute the lead. And then I just move this over a little bit so it gets muted less. Then you can see some of the ones that are not playing at the same time as the kick are moved closer together. So that has two purposes. It helps you hear it more clearly to avoid the sidechain, but it also changes the rhythm of it a little bit and gives it just a little bit more swing. Makes it sound a little bit more human and also a little bit more chaotic and less robotic, which is pretty important. I definitely try to save these tiny changes like this for the end of the song. Like, don't worry about this stuff when you're just starting a song. Don't worry about changing the attack by 12 milliseconds. Do that at the end when you actually have it in audio format and you actually know what leads you're going to be using. That's the main lead though. That plays basically throughout the entire song, the entire drop. It's layered with some other sounds like this. And this I made by putting the lead through shifter on the ring mode like I showed you earlier. You just slap shifter on it, put it on ring mode and start twisting knobs and you just record what sounds good. That's what this is. Let's see, how long is this? I mean, how long is this? This thing is like 20 seconds and I ended up only using like 1 second of it. And then I also used the spectral resonator to make some glitches like this one. And that one you can use spectral resonator. You can set the carrier to be MIDI if you want. And that's what I did. I put the spectral resonator on the lead, set the MIDI carrier to be this. And that's how you can kind of make glitches that are in key. I'm not going to pull up spectral resonator right now and show you how to do that, but if you watch the glitter YouTube short tutorial, I show it in there, basically just how to set it up. Instead of using the internal carrier, you use a MIDI. And then you basically just play around with the delay and feedback and you just record it and see what you get. That part is pretty cool. I don't know how long this whole thing is. It's super long. Is it really that long? Yeah. 50 seconds. And I only used like 3 seconds of it. But yeah, you just gotta play around with those glitches. The spectral resonator, corpus, shifter, and then you'll know when you get something that you like. Even if it's like a minute long that you recorded, you'll find something in there that you like. It's basically the same thing, shifter with ring. This is the same thing. It's the lead with shifter and then flattened it to audio and it's getting pitched up. And then we're using some echo and reverb here to wash it out a little bit before the halfway point of the drop. I'll get to the bass next, but first I just want to talk about these vocal samples. At 1/4 of the way through the drop, the same part where we are introducing the new percussion, we're also introducing these vocal samples. Just to give it a little bit of rhythm. These one-word vocal samples are pretty important in hybrid trap. Even if they're super quiet, they are important. There's a siren at the start. And the lead reverse to kind of fade into the lead. For the siren, what did I do? Okay, just EQ automations on the siren. It slides up to A. I think, is the bass playing A? No. Well, A is kind of in key with D, I think. I don't know, maybe it's not. The siren is playing A though, because it slides up to A and then it sits there. So I'm pretending that this siren is A, even if it's not. But that just plays during the first section. Then for the B section, it doesn't play. So the last part of this drop is the bass. So I made the sub bass with the evolution wavetable. And then automating the wavetable position, the low pass filter cutoff, tube distortion, and the wavetable is, the evolution wavetable is probably my favorite for any bass notes that are below F, because you can get this second or third harmonic here. You can make it like really, really huge. So if I change this, like right here, you see how this harmonic is a lot louder now than it was. When you're playing bass around D, I think, if you really want to feel it, or to hear it, I suppose, really, you kind of boost that area, because you're just not going to hear the fundamental when it's way down there at like 40. Your ear is just gonna latch on to what's around 100, and that's just gonna tell your brain like how loud it is or what note is playing. So with the evolution wavetable, you can really boost that frequency. In this case, I kind of didn't do that. I would kind of expect this harmonic to be a lot louder, but I didn't actually do it this time. But we are using the evolution wavetable. That's just for the sub bass. And then it's sliding up. So it slides up 3 semitones kind of at the end of each section to build some dissonance. That's one layer of the bass. The other layer is this. I spent a crazy amount of time on this trying to figure it out. So hopefully if you're still watching this video, hopefully you can learn something from this if you didn't already know it. Basically, the trick was to first take the sub bass, put redux on it to downsample it, and then put a vocoder on it and use noise as the carrier. Yeah, that took me forever to figure out. I mean, I've done this before, but I always come back to the vocoder with noise for this layer. This noise layer is actually crucial to the song. It's actually holding this entire drop together. Here's the song without it. It's like the most important part of the song, almost. It's crazy important, and it's just basically white noise. So I played around with it a lot to get it to actually work with the song. It's also pretty loud. It's louder than I would usually have the white noise. I mean, it's leaving the track at -13, but then it's getting boosted by all of the clipping that's done later. So we are putting an EQ on the bass group, and then we are cutting the frequencies where the lead is. So this envelope follower on the lead is telling the bass group how loud the lead is. And then depending on how loud it is, it's cutting the EQs. Just to kind of clean everything up a little bit. You don't always need to do this. Some songs you don't need to duck it that much. Usually when a song has a lot of different layers like this, I will go out of my way to start by cutting it too much, to clean it up too much, and then I'll kind of work my way backwards from there. At the halfway point, we kind of just repeat these vocals from the build. There's this layer, which is the vocal recorded with reverb, and then it is getting pitched up somewhere. I think I pitched it up before I recorded it. Just to build more tension and make this whole section of the song sound more strange, because we're basically building into the second half of the drop. I think most drops would stop at this point and maybe have a breakdown or something different, but this one, it just keeps going. So we have to build more tension to lead into that. That's basically it for the drop, though. I'll show you the lead one more time so you can see the automations on it, because they are slightly different for the second half. And then we transition into the outro, where we're mostly reusing things from the intro. For the effects, we have a reversed impact into a regular impact. We have the slide, the Wolves Swim 808 slide. This is probably one of my favorite things I've ever made. I use it in probably almost half of my songs. It's really nice. It's just an 808, like a triangle or a saw wave, and then it's being pitched down an octave. It's just really loud. There's a clap, that flutter down lift, cymbal transition, and the verse glitter. And all of those effects are just used to transition out of the drop. And there's sidechain to the kick. There's one more kick that plays at the end. just to give everything something to sidechain to. For the leads, we bring the piano in and the pad. And then we wash everything out with reverb. So the last thing I'll do is I will talk about the overall processing, the mixing. For the verse, the effects and the leads all go into the same group. That group has the washout, a limiter just to stop it from going above 0, and the sidechain to the build kick, the drop kick, the snare, the verse kick. There is some processing being done in ozone, some dynamic EQ, the spectral imaging just to control the width a little bit. Like you can see, if we look at the low end, it's pretty thin. There's some width. It was originally a lot wider. And then there is saturation on mid-side mode. So the sides, the width is getting a little bit more saturation than the center. That's for the effects and the verse leads. And then all of the drums, the verse, the build, the drop, they all go into the same group. And we do similar processing, just dynamic EQ. Imaging. For the drums, I will do the imaging in 2 bands, the low and the high I just make it wider. And then we saturate the width. The vocals, the bass, and the drop leads and the drop samples all go into the same group where we are doing the same thing. Dynamic EQ, imaging, saturation. And this group also has the sidechain. I'm using Shaperbox to sidechain, which I've been doing a lot more recently. Yeah, you can be pretty surgical with Shaperbox sidechain, so I like that. I've been doing it a lot more recently, especially just on the drop, even like just to the kick and not to the snare. Sometimes I won't route the drop bass through that same sidechain because sometimes I won't sidechain the drop bass to the snare, but in this song I did because the bass is taking up like the entire frequency spectrum. It definitely is overlapping with the snare, so it's worth it to sidechain this time. Then everything goes through the main bus where we are doing more dynamic EQing. This is super aggressive. I wouldn't recommend doing this much. Yeah, that's a lot. Then it goes through a clipper and a limiter. This is when it becomes really loud. Let's hear it without. Yeah, Spaghetti has a tutorial about how he made Zoom, and he was doing something similar, I believe. I don't remember if he was using ozone, but yeah, you can make things really loud with a clipper or a limiter. It doesn't have to be ozone, that's just what I'm using here. And then when I export the song for mastering, I turn this off. I'll just keep it on. Usually when I'm mixing the song, because it's going to be on there when I master the song, so I kind of want to know what I'm getting myself into, but then I will turn it off when I export for the mastering process. And that is it for this video. Hopefully you learned something. Let me know in the comments if I missed anything or if there's any other tutorials you want me to make a video about. One more time, I will leave a link for you to stream the finished version of this song in the description, so if you want to check that out, you can. Feel free to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more tutorials from me. For now, I'm just going to play the second half of this song, and then I will let the video end. Peace out, y'all.